Saltaire. This is Marcia on the Saltaire. Today we are headed to Beaufort, South Carolina, and we will learn a little bit about the history of the area once we get there. I'm showing you this large ship because this is part of what we have to share the ICW with. It's a large, I think it might be a container ship. It looks like we're going to run into it. We are not. It is headed out to the ocean. We are going to be staying on the ICW. But we are near a port, an open area where it can venture on out into the Atlantic as we go on the ICW up to Beaufort, South Carolina. All these boats fleeing from this large ship. It looks like they're villagers fleeing the giant coming to the town. But actually, you can see how the little ships do need to get out of the way of the big ship. Be docking here in the harbor at Beaufort, South Carolina, and we will more or less park our boat, and we are planning on taking a tour. This is a park next to the harbor where we are going on a tram tour today to learn about the Beaufort historic area. This is downtown Beaufort today. You can see that it is very much like any small town USA, with lots of small shops to browse and many great restaurants to dine at. As quaint as this seems, back in colonial times, England needed people to colonize this area. In order to entice people to move to the colonies from England, land grants were offered. So if you made it through the 3-month uncomfortable journey across the ocean and survived, then you were granted land for free. You were, however, expected to build a house and start growing crops within 5 years of your arrival. As time marched on, Beaufort became a great place to grow such crops as Sea Island cotton and indigo. And being such profitable crops, many antebellum plantations were built in the area. Then came the Civil War. The Great Skedaddle of 1861. Beaufort Port Royal and the Sea Islands have so many stately mansions from the Civil War era due to something called the Great Skedaddle of 1861, when the residents of Beaufort heard that they were going to be invaded by the Union. Every white man, woman, and child packed up and skedaddled out of town. The Union Army claimed Beaufort without a fight, and by setting up operations in the town's stately mansions, this rescued the mansions from destruction. The mansions were turned into offices, dorms, and hospitals. To this day, Beaufort has many surviving antebellum architecture that than anywhere else in the U.S. Now, I'd like to get back to the Great Skedaddle in just a moment. Right now, I would like to talk about Dr. Johnson's house, the castle. He raised Sea Island cotton, plus he had a brick-making plantation, making him a very wealthy man. When he built his home, he wanted a more European-style home, so he built his house out of brick covered with stucco and scored it with lime to make it look as though it was made from masonry block. However, the double veranda still signals. Let's talk about the live oaks in South Carolina. This one is about 150 years old. Live oaks are extremely protected by law in South Carolina. You cannot trim or cut down a live oak without a professional arborist. The branches of this one are being held up by wires to encourage them to grow away from the house. Because if if the house interferes with their growth, then you have to talk about tearing down the house as opposed to tearing down the tree. Now, back to the Great Skedaddle. After the Great Skedaddle, the Civil War would continue for years. Now, because roughly 8,000 enslaved people were abruptly thrust into freedom, this created some unknowns. Some ran away, not knowing if their former enslavers would return. Others celebrated, occupying the grand antebellum mansions and liberating the abandoned food and drink. Several expressed their anger by destroying the cotton gins and barns that they knew to be instruments of the slave crop. Some thought ahead, planting potatoes and corn to prepare for an uncertain winter. This began the Port Royal experiment, or the rehearsal for the Reconstruction. For the next 4 years, the area would remain under the control of federal troops. It became a haven for freed people, those escaping slavery. Government officials at the highest levels observed what was happening. Northern abolitionists and relief societies sent more than 50 educators and reformers to provide relief, start schools, and manage plantations. The new arrivals included Boston abolitionist William Gannett and Philadelphia-based educators Charlotte Fortin and Laura Town. Over the next few years, thousands more who had escaped or been freed from slavery came to the Sea Islands, seeking opportunities to earn a wage for their labor and even being able to own land. They began to reunite their families, which had been separated by slavery. They started attending schools and exercised their political power. Beaufort has been the location for many famous movies. This house was where the movie The Big Chill was shot. Other movies filmed in Beaufort include Forrest Gump, A Perfect World, The Jungle Book, The Big Chill, Forces of Nature, Rules of Engagement, The Prince of Tides, and there were a few other ones. The next thing I would like to talk about, this is the first African Baptist church. This church is still active today. The church started in 1863 as a praise house called Baptist Church Colored. Praise houses are one-room church houses in the Sea Islands that provide places of worship, social events, and educational classrooms for African Americans. Next up is Fort Frederick, and it was completed by 1899. It was intended to protect the entrance to Port Royal Sound against potential Spanish, French, and Native American attacks. Fort Frederick served as little more than a storehouse during the majority of the years that it was in use. Next, let's talk a little about the architecture. The Beaufort style. The Beaufort Historic District is a mix of federal, neoclassic, Greek Revival, and Victorian styles. The city is also known for its widespread use of tabby construction, using oyster shells, sand, lime, and ash to make an early form of concrete. Some of the architectural elements of Beaufort are a raised foundation, the house will face south, wraparound piazzas, low-pitched roofs, T-shaped plans, and floor-to-ceiling windows and double verandas. This is all to help keep the houses cooler during the summer months. The interiors will boast of marble mantels and floating staircases. The pastel shades that you see indicate an influence from the Barbados or the Caribbean. The blue paint on the porch ceilings is called haint blue, and this is to keep the haints away. This brings us back to the park where we started. This park is next to the harbor and where we will be leaving tomorrow to head for Charleston, South Carolina. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed our visit to Beaufort, South Carolina, and will join us in Charleston, South Carolina. See you soon, and don't forget to like, ring the bell, and subscribe. See you again real soon.